know what's really crazy? Here I am, a Giants fan. I'm defending the Patriots, and with this year, and I remember having to defend them when they beat the Rams in what people said was the most boring Super Bowl. I was like, not first of all, that was not a boring Super Bowl. That was, you know what that was? That was a defensive clinic by Bill Belichick and the Patriots when they won that year. Yes, and here we go. It is episode 98 of Moving the Goalposts here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. You can watch this show and all of our podcasts here on the ETB Network at youtube.com/ETB Network, where we continue to grow there. You can also get our live streaming shows and so much more. And if you can't watch us on the video side, you can also listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your favorite podcast. And of course, like I said, make sure to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel and have your notifications set so you know when all of our stuff is going to be coming out. I'm Johnny Montalbano, joined today by Ben Kruse. Ben, good to see you. I know you are really doing well, but thanks for joining us today. How are you?
Good, Johnny. I am doing really well. We'll probably find out more about that later on throughout the program, the reason why. But glad to be back on here with you. I know it's been a couple of months, so glad to come on and talk some sports.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's good to be back on this week. Last week on the show, they had a little bit of moving the or unnecessary goalposts. They combined both this show and Nick D and Liam's show, Unnecessary Wagers, on here last week. And actually, before we get started here, obviously our thoughts and prayers are with Nick D. I know he's going through a tough time right now, so we're thinking of him as we do this show. But I'm glad that Ben, you could join us this week to do it, and you come on. We're gonna a lot to discuss here as we start to get through the end of January. I can't believe as we do this, we're a third of the way from February starting. I mean, this year it's already flying by, which is just absolutely crazy to say. In fact, next week will be the start of my 12th year down here in South Carolina, which is just absolutely wild to think about. But a lot to get through in the course of the show. We'll get into the college football. Put a capper on the season there. Congratulations to Indiana, Kirk Signetti, Fernando Mendoza, and the guys there. One of the best turnarounds in sports history, and they cap off a perfect 16-0 season. So we'll get to that and so much more. But obviously a lot of NFL talk. And boy, I mean, we could literally spend the whole show on the NFL, but certainly a lot to get to with not only the coaching news, but on the field too. And that's where we will start, is with a recap of the divisional playoffs, which was a great weekend in terms of the action. I mean, you had a little bit of everything. You had injuries, you had blowouts, you had very close games, you had drama, you had controversy, a little bit of it all. But the first of those two close games, which happened Saturday afternoon, the very first game, was the Denver Broncos getting past the Buffalo Bills in dramatic fashion. And this game really had an effect for both teams at the end of the day, because yes, it's a big win for the Broncos to get into the AFC Championship, but it's a very costly win because a couple of plays before the Broncos kicked the game-winning field goal, Ben, we found out that Bo Nix suffered a season-ending ankle injury. And actually, we didn't find this out until after the game from Sean Payton, but it was actually 2 plays before the end of the game. So obviously a lot to get to. We know this was a very costly game also for the Bills, which we'll get into in just a little bit when we talk about the coaching carousel. But this game was wild for so many ways. So where do you want to start?
Yeah, no, it was crazy. I was actually at a hockey game during this game. So I was trying to watch the hockey game and this game at the exact same time. It definitely was very tough, but I did what I did. And it just seemed like it was just a back and forth type of game, which I think a lot of people were expecting it to be. The Broncos are a very tough place to play in Denver, and the Bills are, looked like potentially as that team that could have made it all the way without, Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, all these big-time quarterbacks. Basically, kind of with all the rest of the teams that we have, during the divisional round and what we have now in the Final Four, it just seemed like that he was the best quarterback of it all, which I think most people would say. And the fact is that they're currently now out, and they didn't even make it to to the championship, and they obviously made a big time change, which we'll talk about throughout the show. But yeah, very unfortunate news for Bo Nix. I think a lot of people are extremely shocked after the fact of what happened. I mean, I remember just checking my Twitter, I think I read something. Actually, a friend of mine texted me just saying Nick's out for the year, and I'm like, wait, I guess kind of like a bludge, like kind of went past it or whatever. But I went to Schefter just kind of see if it was true, and yeah, it said it was true, and I was so shocked because I'm like, he seemed okay when he was doing his press conference and obviously agreeing and everything like that, and he probably was doing what he can to just say, listen, I probably dealt with something that I didn't want to talk about, but I'm just going to keep on playing and try to get the team a win and go from there. But Payton definitely probably saw something definitely was up, and I think he wanted to just say it after the game was over because whether win or lose, now the fact that they are now moved on to face a certain team, which we'll talk about momentarily, he wanted to kind of just get it out there so nobody was completely shocked, throughout the whole entire week. And of course, the Broncos obviously have to game plan, with this, situation coming up, which is very unfortunate. Obviously with Josh Allen, he made some plays, but he also had some big time mistakes that completely cost. The fumble that he had where the Broncos were up by 7 points, right before halftime with about 10, 15 seconds left, and he fumbled the ball. Everybody wants to talk about Josh Allen, and the Superman that, of course, that he is. But, when it comes to Superman at times, it sometimes can take a toll, because he basically has to do everything possible for this team to win football games. And he tried to sometimes be a little bit too over, right, throughout the game. Of course, the strip sack that he had, I think that was kind of more of a better play on the defensive side than anything. But that turnover that he had, a couple of interceptions that were very tough. The Brandon Cooks one obviously was definitely more a controversial one. I thought that Josh actually made a pretty good throw. It just was a very good play. So the Broncos did make some really good plays defensively, and they made some big time plays when they had to. The Marvin Mims catch that obviously was right before the overtime happened. So the Broncos have been kind of shown this year as a team that is very determined. They definitely have a lot of grit and a lot of belief in that team. And the Bills, they just came up short again.
Three things to take from this game, and the Bo Nix thing was the third one when we were really talking about the first two, and then this comes out of nowhere, and it really did. And I'll try and get these in order. Number one, the officiating. And now I know you didn't see this game in real time because you were at your hockey game, but the officiating is obviously a big talking point in this game, and obviously that turnover that the Broncos got in overtime. I still don't know what to make of it because the thing I thought of was, aren't all turnovers reviewable? And I guess apparently in overtime it's not in the playoffs because it looked like that was a catch by the Bills receiver and he held on to, and he went down before the McMillan. I think it was McMillan who got the INT ultimately. That was a big deal. Now, that being said, that's very debatable, and it's still being debated to this day. But the two pass interference penalties, that another thing that people want to talk about, those to me, the officials got right. And this is always a thing to me when it comes to pass interference, is are the defenders playing the ball? And in both instances, the defender was not. He did not turn around to play. He was playing the receiver. And that to me is something that pass interference is going to get called every single time. So I believe that the officials actually got that part right. It was obviously a big moment in the game. That turnover happens, and then the Broncos end up going down and winning it. But like you said, so the officiating is one. Josh Allen is two. And when I look at this game, and when I look at the Bills season as a whole, this was the worst Bills team constructed. And I think the wrong person got scapegoated in this, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But without Josh Allen, the Bills to me are a 4 or 5 win team this season. Because their defense, especially their run defense, was not any good this year. Their receivers, they had guys in and out of the lineup. I think Keon Coleman, who actually did make a couple of catches in this game, was inactive for a period of time. I mean, the Josh Allen's best receivers this year were his tight ends. His two tight ends that he had, Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. Those were really his best receivers. So Allen was doing a lot with little, is what I would say this year. I mean, James Cook at running back has been fantastic. Allen's also had to run it with his legs, which he's done his whole career. I mean, he's been great passing and running it. But there's only so many times. But both quarterbacks had bad interceptions in this game too. So it goes on both ends. But Bo Nix was also doing an unbelievable job. And I felt like when we were previewing this game, the problem that I had with the Bills side was I think Josh Allen was their only way to win this game, and he was showing that. But when you looked at the Broncos, it was not only Bo Nix and sometimes their clutchness, but their defense, and it showed too. Their defense got to Allen, sacks, quarterback pressures, hits. They definitely showed that, and they recovered a couple of turnovers. So you had that. You had obviously the controversy with the officiating, and then you had the Bo Nix thing. And as crazy as it was, because it had an hour or two after the game, when we're still debating and breaking down what had happened, Sean Payton actually came out for a second time, and that's how we found out about the Bo Nix thing, which was just absolutely wild. Because I don't think you ever see a head coach come out for a second press conference after a game, unless you know it's something serious. And he tried to, underlie it, but I mean, you feel terrible for Bo Nix. I mean, it's absolutely devastating for multiple reasons. I mean, because he's been playing great. He had a tough start to his rookie year, like his first 4 or 5 games, but then he played great from that point on. And it was the same thing this year. He got off to a bit of a slow start. I think the team was better, but now it's just like, how do you pick up for this with Jarrett Stidham? Now, Jarrett Stidham is a decent backup, but now you're going to throw him into the fire in the AFC Championship game against your team, which is done outstanding this year. Now, I think the Broncos still have a chance, but there's a lot of pressure on him. It's really going to show, though, is that defense is going to be under a tremendous amount of pressure for the Broncos. And I know they're home on Sunday, but it's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure for this Broncos defense. But we'll see. But it's just crazy because this game had so many things, and we'll find out. It's just, you even had a big man eligible touchdown in this one too. So absolutely wild. I felt like this was, a more favorable matchup for the Broncos because I felt like there were more ways they could win it versus the Bills. And we definitely did see that, even if there was some controversy in this one. Maybe definitely some controversy with the INT in overtime, but to me, there's no controversy when you look at the 2 pass interference penalties by the Bills defense. Those were, if you're not turning around and playing the ball, they're going to call that every single time like they should. Now, as this game was going on and as it ended, and the talk about Josh Allen and Bo Nix's injury and the officiating was going on, we did have the NFC divisional, the first of 2 NFC divisionals happening Saturday night. And really, there's not much to talk about with this one because this was all Seahawks. I mean, maybe going into it, the talk was about Sam Darnold and his oblique injury and how that was going to factor into this one. But, I mean, you really didn't even need to do much because when Shaheed runs the opening kickoff back for a score, and by the way, what a great pickup that was for the Seahawks. That play in itself was a winner for the Seahawks. But this was a situation almost like what happened with the Niners back in 2022 in the NFC Championship game. The injuries just caught up to them. And there's only so much that Brock Purdy and company can do. And it also just shows you, Ben, to me, this Seahawks defense is very, very dangerous.
Yeah. No, this is a team that definitely can make a push to go to the Super Bowl. The Seattle team, they have a strategy with Mike McDonald, obviously, is a defensive-minded type of coach that, Sam Darnold is basically a game manager that basically has done a really good job basically all year. JSN, of course, is one of the best players in football as a receiver. He's really taking that next step. And, it really sucks about Zach Charbonnet. Unfortunately, he's going to be out. He has, obviously, we talk about big injuries. He's a very big injury for them because they have a really good 2 tandem as a running game. And him being out really sucks. But Kenneth Walker really did a really good job, 3 touchdowns. They really had a carbon copy of their game against the Niners, the last week of the season, where they basically just ran up the ball. And you were talking about the injuries catching up to them. Well, the injuries really caught up to them on the defensive side because Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, who are 2 of their best defensive players, obviously. Fred Warner is one of the best linebackers in terms of stopping the run. Nick Bosa is obviously very good in attacking the quarterback. So, you obviously have those 2 guys out. And, of course, on the offensive side, without George Kittle, I think it's just a massive loss for that offense to really find chemistry. They're also without Ricky Pearsall. So it just took so much pressure on Brock Purdy to do the job and to go to a really tough place and a tough environment on playoff, 12th man, and just everything. I didn't obviously expect a blowout, but I'm also not surprised at the same time because I think it was just kind of shown where Seattle was playing at very, very high confidence. And, basically from that kick return, that was kind of just an overall sign of basically how the game was going to go.
Yeah, and that's why I believe Kyle Shanahan has to be right up there for Coach of the Year this year because of all the man games that the 49ers lost this year to injury, whether it was on offense or defense. What he was able to do this year, remember, Brock Purdy was out for a long period of time, and your former buddy Mac Jones had stepped in, and he did a very good job. And now you wonder with the Niners going forward here, one of the reasons why teams are able to repeat the success that they've had is because they could keep a good core group of their players and keep their coordinators. And we found out this week that Robert Saleh, who did great for them on the defensive side as DC, is going to go to the Titans. We'll talk about that in depth in just a little bit. But, when these guys from very good teams, even the coordinators, when they leave, that's as big of a loss as, maybe losing a star player or a valuable role player to free agency too.
Yep.
So we'll find out. I mean, it really was not a lot of drama with this one, especially when the Seahawks jump out to an early lead. Sam Darnold doesn't have to do much. Again, though, this one may be a costly one for the Seahawks with Charbonnet being ruled out for the season. I think that actually is kind of significant, and he might linger into next year because of the torn ACL, and it's awfully late in the season to be tearing your ACL and being ready for the start of next year. He might be back by, in the middle part of the year. But I think the reason why that is actually kind of significant is because it looked like Walker was their lead guy to start the year. Then he had faded a little bit, and they went with Charbonnet. And it almost looked like he was getting a little bit more. I both of the guys in fantasy this year, so I noticed how it looked like Walker's numbers were going down and Charbonnet's were going up, and trying to figure out which one of those 2 I wanted to plug in. They were going with that, and they were also adding a 3rd and a 4th running back there too. So it does impact their depth a little bit. But Kenneth Walker, like you said, had stepped up and did fantastic. Now, can he do that against a Rams defense next week? We'll find out. He's gonna be very critical for them, and I'll talk about that game later on in the week. And then we got to Sunday, and your Patriots, Ben. It was your defense. Yeah, put that cap on, Ben. Absolutely, yes. And I got to tell you, the thing that really impressed me from the Patriots side in this game was not really the offense, but the defense. I mean, I was thinking of this game that the Texans defense, which was going to be the Pats' biggest challenge. But I got to tell you, I was amazed. Now, I think the Texan defense actually did play very well. But I was really impressed by this Pats defense. And for whatever excuse you want to say, weather or whatnot, I don't think there's really an excuse. C.J. Stroud played terrible, and the Pats defense played absolutely amazing. And I'll tell you what, that defense steps up like that. I mean, the sky's the limit with this team. But, I mean, you got to be over the moon. It was the perfect conditions. It was snowing there. Second half of the game, you had Buck and Aikman, just like old times on a Sunday afternoon in Foxborough. Unbelievable job. And really, from a game where Drake May didn't have to even be his best.
Yeah, it felt like the old days, in terms of some of the dynasty playoff games. Obviously with the weather, of course, into effect. And I said this about the Texans on forecast that, the Texans without Nico Collins is obviously massive. The way that C.J. Stroud played against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week definitely was a very interesting telling sign of how he was going to potentially be against the Patriots, in which he had a lot of turnover-worthy type of plays, and even the overall some of the throws that he had. I mean, if you take a look at it, that the first throw that he had to open up the game was complete missed throw where the guy specifically was wide open in the flat. And I basically said to myself, like, ugh, like, this was a guy that we talked about, CJ Stroud, a couple of years ago, in which he was up there potentially as an upper echelon of quarterbacks. And I don't exactly know what happened to him overall. I mean, I'm very glad that we were able to kind of shake him up on Sunday. But, I basically said, kind of carbon copy the way the Pittsburgh Steelers defense was. And I think you feel pretty good about your chances because they also lost Dalton Schultz throughout the game. That was an absolute massive loss for them. He did have a big-time play earlier on the game, and so he was out. And then Trent Brown was already out to start up the game. He was the right tackle, and their backup, who was pretty decent, he got out. So I basically told myself that this game was already going to be a low-scoring game anyway, but if you're able to get some turnovers in which the Patriots had some chances to get turnovers early with some tip passes that they didn't get to, and then eventually with Marcus Jones pick six, in which Kevin Chason has been very, very good for us as a defensive end, got in front of CJ's face, which Pittsburgh basically did, and he was shook. He really had no answers for this pass rush, and got to give a lot of credit to Zach Kerr and basically have the same game plan that you had against Justin Herbert, in which, you got to just get a lot of pressure on. Obviously, the secondary was incredible in this game, and they have been for a while now. The Patriots, Johnny, haven't given up more than 2 touchdowns throughout the overall postseason, and they've had over 60-plus pressures, which is something specific that just does not happen a lot. So they're playing really well, really, really well defensively. And like you said, this Patriots defense is playing like this, the sky is a limit for us because, it's going to be a tough one against Denver. But, I was very impressed with the way that they played. And talking about Drake, I mean, obviously the fumbles are a massive concern, but I definitely was kind of expecting this to happen against this Texans team. And this Texans defense is the number one best defense in football because of those 2 guys on the outside. The Patriots, I thought, did a really good job of finding a way to get some short field opportunities. Of course, the touchdown pass to Booty was sick. That catch was nothing short of spectacular. I still was in massively disbelief when I was watching with my dad that he actually caught that ball. And I basically told myself, I said, after that, I felt we were pretty good about chance of winning because the Texans had so many chances to whether to tie the game up, to take the lead when the game was basically kind of still in reach. And we were able to keep them either to field goals or force some turnovers. The Texans just didn't have a lot, at least to the outside, that I'm not saying are terrible players, but it doesn't scream to me where they were having a really hard time throughout the season with Nico Collins out there in terms of moving the ball down the field. That's why I told myself 2 year on forecast that without Joe Mixon, who was a really good player for them last year against us, him being out was massive. I mean, Woody Marks and Nick Chubb, they're not bad, but they just the overall type of formula the Texans is to win by short field opportunities by their defense and then have the offense kind of take over after. And with the way that CJ Stroud was kind of playing the whole entire game, his confidence was struck. He played terrible. No discredit to that, but it was also a credit to how this defense was.
Yeah, and Ben, that's why I said it in real time. I tweeted it out. I could not believe that they did not go to Davis Mills because it was not only just the way that CJ Stroud was playing, but it was his body language. I mean, they were showing ESPN was showing still shots and slow replay images of Stroud's body language. And I'd like to say that I could read it pretty well. I don't want to say I'm an expert, but yeah. I'm looking at him and I'm like, he looks shook. I'm like, Davis Mills did well when he was in there for Stroud when he was hurt earlier in the year and he missed a couple of games. Mills went in there and actually did all right. And I understand that it's a challenge for a backup quarterback to go in that situation, but the Texans still had a chance in this game. I mean, I'm thinking when you have 4 turnovers in the first half and yet you're still within reach and you're getting the ball early in that second half, I'm like, there's your shot to make a switch. And I think D'Amico Ryans has done an unbelievable job there with this Texans team. I have been high on them all year. I was high on them even when they started out 0-3 because that's how good their defense was. And I thought their defense actually played outstanding in this game. Mm-hmm. But CJ Stroud literally gave them no shot to win this game. And I know the injuries definitely caught up with them. The Nico Collins thing, even Brown, the offensive lineman who was out, when I saw he was inactive, that was a big deal because that was the one thing with the Texans. Their offensive line struggled at the beginning of the year, but second half, that was a big reason why that Stroud was starting to play better. And now you're having questions with Stroud if he really is the long-term answer there in Houston, which is absolutely crazy to think about.
Yeah.
A few years into the season, the big debate was about Stroud versus Bryce Young, and here you now have the Panthers giving Bryce Young the fifth-year option without any hesitation because of how he's been able to turn it around. And now you're having question marks with Stroud. And the thing, too, with Stroud, which also concerns me, too, is his health. He's had multiple concussions throughout his first couple of years in the league. And you now have to really wonder if he really is the long-term answer there, or does Houston really have a problem?
Yeah, no pun intended, right?
Well, yeah.
But, yeah, no, I agree. I really, really do agree. And the way that CJ was confident last week, I mean, to have a quarterback to go in the elements of New England like that, there's no worse situation for him to have it, especially with not a lot of his special guys out there. And also the D'Amico Ryans play that he had it where, technically speaking, they had, I think it was like 4 minutes left. And, I mean, it was probably still going to be over, but, like, for them to even have a shot to, like, go down the field and maybe get points. And they punted the ball, and it's almost like they conceded the game at that point in time. And my brother looked to me just like, they punted, really? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that was a little bit shocking. And it basically tells me that, like, one, probably they were probably trusting their defense and maybe having a short field turnover or something like that. But it's just kind of telling me that, it just wasn't going to be their type of day. So.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, though, the Pats, and the real scary thing, like I said, was that Drake May did not have to do much. He didn't look that great at times, but he made that throw to Booty, like you said, was probably one of the most amazing things. And he's getting every one of his guys involved. And that's what he's done this year, whether it's been Booty or Diggs or Douglas. Henry, the tight end's been great too. That team is great. And Mike Vrabel, again, coaching's everything. And we've seen it in these playoffs. We saw it with Liam Cohen getting the Jaguars into the playoffs. We saw it with Ben Johnson getting the Bears into the playoffs, and we'll talk about them in just a second. But Mike Vrabel going to New England, I thought that was a home run hire, and you've seen him take off from there. And look, I don't want, and people are going to say this too, how the Pats have a very favorable road. Stop. Look, you have the road that you take, and look, I'll be honest with you. Look, when you look at it now in the AFC Championship, now we've had three different teams we've had just three teams in some way, shape, or form in the AFC Championship in the last 15 or so years. But you know what though? You take the road that's taken, but it's not like, this is a Patriots team that's been playing great in so many ways. And it starts with the coach, It starts with the quarterback who's been outstanding, who's going to get a lot of MVP votes. I'll tell you right now, I don't know if he's going to win the MVP, but Ben, it's a lot closer than I thought it was several weeks ago. Now, the playoffs obviously have no impact on it, but I think it's a lot closer now than we were thinking it was going to be a while back. I think that's how great he's been. And Vrabel was going to be up there for Coach of the Year. I don't think he'll win it, but he should be right up there as well.
Definitely.
But look, you cannot underestimate how valuable Vrabel's been to this group.
100%.
And this team is, and this team is playing well against quality opponents. They've had quality opponents they've had to play, and they played them very, very well. So look, you take the road that's given to you. Is it a favorable path? Yeah, but you know what? Who cares?
And really, one more quick thing, Johnny, is that Drake May is the only quarterback that has had more than 2 touchdowns against the number 1 defense in the league this year. And people want to talk about the schedule, which, of course, at this point in time, I've heard it probably every single week at this point in time, so it's nothing new to me. But you just put up 28 points on the best defense in the game with the elements like that. That just basically tells me everything that you need to know about this team. Is this team has heard the noise, and players, if you actually hear the post-game stuff about it, Kevin Chason and Stephon Diggs, like, they don't want to hear this BS anymore from the outsiders. They're basically saying it's all on us. That's why the slogan that they said this year is "We all we got, we all we need," is because we're just going to go every week in battle. We don't care about this outside noise. And, I think they basically want to have not like an underdog type of mentality, but it's just like, we're just going to keep going and just go for it. And that's what I've been loving about the team.
Yeah, and here I am. I'm a Giants fan. But boy, you know what's really crazy? Here I am, a Giants fan. I'm defending the Patriots, and with this year, and I remember having to defend them when they beat the Rams in what people said was the most boring Super Bowl. I was like, not first of all, that was not a boring Super Bowl. That was, you know what that was? That was a defensive clinic by Bill Belichick and the Patriots when they won that year. If you want boring Super Bowls, last year is boring. That was, and I've said this. I think last year was the worst. I've been around now 35 years. I thought that was the worst Super Bowl I ever watched was last year, from start to finish, from the game to the anthem to the halftime show to the commercials to the game itself. And look, I saw 2000 Super Bowl when we got destroyed by the Ravens. We at least got there. So obviously it's a little different when your team actually is in the game, but no, that one last year was the worst. And now the Pats have a chance to get back there again and have a rematch against either those Rams or have a rematch against the Seahawks. So speaking of the Rams, though, boy, they sure didn't make it easy again as they got past the Bears, but it took overtime. It took them overcoming another clutch, dramatic late fourth quarter throw by Caleb Williams. But then the thing I want to focus in, at least in the start in this one, is I don't think this is really talked about a lot and enough in this one, and it's really not talked about enough in this playoff. Field goals in some way, shape, or form. It is amazing how that is impacting these games. Whether it's great kickers like Cam Little missing them, or or like in the Bears case in the very beginning, not going for it, not taking the field goal. Because I had no issue with Ben Johnson going for it. Like late first quarter, early second quarter when they got the touchdown early. But opening possession of the game, you got to take the 3 points there. You cannot be going for it on fourth down. It's the same mistake, and I know the Panthers played very, very well, but it was the same mistake that the Panthers made, Dave Canales made on the opening drive against the Rams in the wild card round. When you're 4th and 1 inside your own 35 or 40-yard line, you cannot give what possibly could be the MVP of the league a short field. And in this situation, you cannot be leaving points on the board against the MVP. And I know the Rams defense has not played great in the playoffs or towards the end of the season, but you got to get the points in the beginning there. Him not kicking that field goal in the beginning, and I think he tried making up for it by going for it. And then the other thing, though, too, is, and I wonder what your thought is about this, when Caleb makes that unbelievable throw, which reminded me a lot as a college guy, it reminded me a lot of what Jalen Milroe did for Alabama against Auburn on 4th and goal from forever. That kind of throw, it reminded me a lot of that. Were you surprised that Ben Johnson and them did not go for 2 and try and go for the win at the very end there?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of these coaches, you look at a guy like Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell is kind of the mastermind of the fourth downs at this point, at this rate. Every time you feel like that, you should just take the points. It bit them for the Lions. Honestly, their best chance to make a deep run against the 49ers when they choked that massive lead because they just kept going for fourth down after fourth down, the big lead, and it came back to bite them. But you look at this overall type of game, right? And Ben Johnson, I think, and what he did for that Bears team was nothing short of spectacular. Basically, kind of getting that team back to relevance and to get a quarterback that basically was, I wouldn't say broken, but a guy that really needed to have some tools with a coach to really unlock his potential as a top pick. Ben Johnson was very, very good at that. But yeah, that fourth down definitely was very, very interesting to say the least. I think this playoffs taking the points is at a massive premium. You've obviously seen this too, Johnny, with the weather. The weather has been a massive thing around a lot of these games. In the Pats game, obviously, with some snow. With the Bears game, we talked about during forecast that was going to be sub-degree temperatures. 0, 5 degrees, and both of those games looked like how we were going to kind of anticipate it. So. I think just that's even more of a vital thing is to take the points, especially in those type of conditions. Obviously they think, they're a coach. I'm not so what do I know? But it was a really good game though. I will say, like you mentioned with the Jalen Miller play, I definitely do remember that. That definitely did not cross my mind until now. So I do thank you for that. I'm not saying I'm a fan of either team, but regardless of the fact, it was just a crazy game. But yeah, Caleb Williams in that throw. And part of me is just like, oh my God, this is absolutely crazy. But then a second thing to me is just like, that's been kind of the Bears season the whole entire year, where it's been just, they've been finding ways to either win games like that, to tie games like that. They haven't been a team that has refused to go away. During the ETB Lounge, I actually made a overall MLB comparison to this Bears team, which I don't know if you kind of happen to agree or not with this, but
Sure.
it kind of reminded me of the Oh My God Mets. And in terms of an overall type of team where they had just a special type of feel to them, like no matter if they won or lost, because they had just some pieces that either were, I want to say overachieving or not, but they just had that overall, just that it factor. That definitely I think that the Bears had in terms of they got themselves back to relevancy. That the comeback, the two comebacks they had against their division rival, the Packers at Soldier Field, that definitely was unbelievable. You know, they just had this that crazy of like up and down roller coaster. When in Minnesota earlier on the year, that field goal, they pulled out some games that, honestly speaking, if they don't pull out, who knows what we're talking about here with their overall team. But you talk about the Rams, and the Rams definitely have a lot of issues themselves defensively. It's going to definitely be interesting to see how they do against Seattle. I don't want to get too ahead of myself with the overall actual game itself, but Seattle and the Rams have, I think I read a stat combined of like 80 points in the two games. I mean, you want to take in terms of overall spread line. I think a lot of us kind of have a decent idea of where you kind of want to take the overall line for this game for sure. Both teams are just playing at all-time high, but they've been giving up quite a bit of points too. So, but in terms of this game, I'm not surprised with how this game goes. Every Bears game has been so high scoring, and win or lose, unfortunately they were on the other side of things. But and credit to the Rams, they pulled out this game. So it was a good game. It really was, and obviously good for the Rams side of things, but the Bears did have a really good season.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the Bears definitely with Ben Johnson. Look, I mean, he's done remarkable this year. And think about, I mean, the Bears, I mean, they had some adversity too, because they had a lot of injuries on that defense at times. I mean, that they had some very valuable names on that defense missing some time this year. So I think that this was actually a remarkable job for them in a division that, when the season started, you could have made the case that all four of those teams could win the division. And at the end of the day, all four of those teams ended up over 500. So that's the one thing you have to watch here with the Rams is, the Packers are still a very young team. They're going to run it back. They extended LaFleur. They're going to extend some guys in that front office too. So they're going to keep it going. And they're still a very, very young team. The Lions still have a lot of names on that team. I know they're going through a little bit of a transition in terms of coordinators too. And then the Vikings, I know James McCarthy's a true wild card, but at the end of the day, they ended up 9-8. So it's not like we could say that the Bears, this is an easy feat for them. And then this could be, a 1-year thing. And then maybe they take a step back. And that's why it's a little bit deflating if you're a Bears fan, I would imagine, because the future does look bright, but that's still probably the most, I could say right now that is, well, you look at the NFC West, I know they had at least three 12-win teams. But that could be the most competitive division in the NFL, is that NFC North. And, what it's going to probably take is it might take some luck. It's going to take some clutchness again, but they're going to have things go their way again next year. Like they might have to have a team suffer a major injury, and you don't want to root for that. I get it. But you're going to need something to go your way because I don't think this is going to be as easy for them to run it back like they did this year. Caleb Williams was a very clutch guy. He had moments. Look, he was clutch. There's some moments that still did question you, like that interception that he threw at the end there was not a good one.
Nope.
But look, it was a great year for them. I just worry a little bit that I wonder if they can run it back because of that competitive division. And I just don't think they have enough. And when I say that is I know there are divisions that are very competitive too, but I just don't know if they have enough guys on that team to run it back like that. I think they got to add some more pieces, and then they could possibly contend. It's just that's a very, very tough division, and one thing that doesn't go their way, let's say they could be on the wrong end of those clutch moments next year, and that could be the difference of them making the playoffs, being back in this spot next year, or not even making the playoffs at all.
Another thing to keep in mind too, Johnny, is I don't think anything will happen via the coaching carousel in the NFC North, but half the league this year has coaching openings, whether it's for their head coach, whether it's for their offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. So every single week we're kind of seeing just different type of guys floating around different spots, and it could be an impact at least for potentially a team like the Bears, in which this is obviously it won't happen, but say Mike McDaniel became an offensive-minded coach for the Vikings, and obviously went for JJ McCarthy. Like things could definitely be changed right in the fly too. So you just never know.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I besides even the head coaches, it's all the coordinators and stuff too, and those are just as significant, like I said, than as losing a key role player or a big time free or losing a big time player to free agency are those coordinators. I think we've seen that with the Eagles a lot. I mean, Jalen Hurts is about to go through his 5th different offensive coordinator in 5 years. I mean, that you cannot be successful that way. It's hard. I can't say you. I shouldn't say you can't be successful, but it's very, very hard to. Yeah. I think Baker Mayfield's the only guy that's shown that he can be successful with as many coordinator switches as he had. So, I mean, it's hard, but we'll see. But speaking of that, Ben, quite a good switch here, and we'll talk about the coaching carousel because as a result of what had happened on Saturday night, or I guess it was end up saying Saturday night, the Bills did fire Sean McDermott. So the Bills will be the 10th team. They are the 10th team that will be looking for a new head coach in the 2026 season. Now we've already had, I believe it's 4 of those being filled. But because this has happened now, the Bills are going to be behind the 8 ball a little bit and trying to find a new guy. I thought what was really crazy about this was not only McDermott being fired, which I'll be honest with you, I was not really that surprised about. I mean, if John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin, Tomlin wasn't fired, but if they both could leave their respective teams, then to me, Sean McDermott can absolutely be gone out of there, Buffalo. But the thing that really surprised me was that Brandon Beane, their GM, actually got elevated and that he's really going to oversee all of this. When I really think that McDermott, at the end of the day, was the scapegoat in all this, and that Beane should have been the one that was really questioned because of how he put that roster together this season.
Yeah. I think part of this, and people can say McDermott could have been fired earlier on over his career. The fact of their failures time again, and I think that the overall the turning point was the Bills pretty much had it. It was this year or not, and they didn't even make the championship, let alone the Super Bowl. I think that Josh Allen and this team, when you kind of look at the overall, playoffs and overall type of teams, like it was there for the taking. And I was talking about this with Nick and Tom on the lounge earlier on this week, and Callan, about that. This Bills team, I thought that they needed some changes, but I don't think that firing McDermott was the right choice. I think this was more the fact is we just had another failure of the season, and we have to finally put a blame on somebody. And I just don't think that McDermott was all for the wrong things. I mean, this guy kept this team competitive year after year after year. I'm not saying that now with him leaving that they're going to completely fall off a cliff because they have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But I think Brandon Beane, he brought in Von Miller, like an old Von Miller a couple years ago. He's definitely just made a lot more question marks than anything, the last couple of years. So I felt that was very, very interesting. The fact that they fired not only McDermott, but they kept somebody else. I thought if they're going to let somebody go, they're going to let both guys go. So it's definitely interesting. I don't really know where the Bills want to kind of pivot because, we'll probably talk about the carousel a little bit more with some of the other teams, but the Dolphins, they just moved on from McDaniel, and they decided to go with a defensive-minded coach, which I just did not understand. I thought that if they were going to move on from somebody, they were going to get another offensive-minded type of coach. So McDermott's more of an offensive-minded type of guy too. So do they want to kind of follow a similar path as what maybe the Dolphins want to do? I just don't know where they want to go from here.
Well, I think the Dolphins thing actually makes sense because their new GM is a Packers guy, so they brought in a Packers guy to be the coach. The thing with the Bills is now because they're out now, like, they're going to be behind the 8 ball and trying to interview some of these guys. So I'm trying to think like a dark horse guy. To me, I think a dark horse guy that could be there, and he's been in Buffalo before, is maybe Dable. I could see Brian Dable going back there again. I know Dable's also been in talks to get some OC positions, like maybe with the Eagles has been rumored. But I could see Dable going back there, or I could really see them going outside the box here and trying to find somebody, because they are kind of behind in terms of trying to pick this. But to me, I know McDermott did very, very well there, but there were times also that you were questioning some of the moves that he was making. And I think this was also a situation with McDermott that ended up being like Harbaugh. I think that things just got stale. See, there's two extremes we have here in the NFL. We have teams that are either firing their coaches way too early and not giving the coach and the quarterback enough time to try and gel and work things together. And then we're also having these situations where you have coaches that are lasting for long periods of time and that the situation is becoming stale. And I think we've seen that now in Buffalo. I think that's what ultimately ended up happening there with the Baltimore Ravens. I think ultimately is what led to Mike Tomlin ultimately going away from the Steelers, not firing him, which is kind of significant, because now if a team wants Tomlin, they got to trade for him. But that's what I think is ultimately ending up happening. So we're trying to find this medium, and I guess McDermott might be the medium in terms of how long he lasted. But at the same time, I think this was also a situation where you could easily blame Bean too, because this looked like the worst roster that they put together. And like I said, I think that without Josh Allen, I think the Bills are a 4 or 5 win team in the 2025 season. He bailed them out a lot. He tried doing it all. He had to do it almost all again in the playoffs, and even still that wasn't enough. But so I'll be very surprised to see what they do. You know, we talked about it a lot too. When the trade deadline comes in the NFL, it's one of the first teams that we always say that should go out there and make a move to improve the roster. It's the Bills, and they usually don't do that.
Yeah. I think another thing too, I mean, I talked about McDermott. I think another thing was that Eagles game, where they basically had hope for still a shot at the division, and he decided to, after Allen had the touchdown, he decided to go for 2 and try to get the win. But theoretically, with the way that the Eagles were basically playing all game, where they couldn't move the ball, and McDermott decided to take a blunder, take a chance, and it backfired on him. So he just had a couple of those very similar like to Jim Harbaugh, and just a lot of the questions of late game execution, late game situations, and so I think the Bills kind of wanted to say, listen, like, we want to go a different path. I will say I think that the Bills and McDermott is going to have a very similar like to Harbaugh. Like, I think that there's now some teams that are going to be calling for him. I floated out a team that I think can make a lot of sense, in which they have more of a coach that is more defensive minded. But I think if he goes there, he could have really good success there, and that's Tampa Bay. I think that the Bucs definitely need more of an offensive-minded guy. They obviously moved on from Liam Cohen last year for Baker, and I think that McDermott could come in, maybe could bring some guys with him. I think they bring Bulls defensive coordinator, and I think that could definitely be a type of staff in which you could definitely have someone there. I mean, I don't know if obviously that would ever happen, but I think that could be a specific type of place, kind of like our Harbaugh went to the Giants. It's not specifically like McDermott can't coach. I just think that the Bills wanted to go kind of a different place of where they need to be. And I think for the Bucs, the Bucs are potentially trying to see if they want to move on from a guy like Bowles. I think that Bowles is not the right spot. He needs to be more of a defensive-minded type of guy, and maybe bring a guy like McDermott, in which he can kind of oversee stuff.
So you're thinking, you have floated it out. So you're thinking that Bowles should either be fired or move to a different spot. Is that what you were saying?
I think Bowles should be just defensive coordinator. I think he's much more suited. There's a lot of coaches that are out there, Johnny, that are just more suited to be a coordinator. Guy like Robert Saleh, for instance. He obviously got a head coach position. I had to hit spoil now, but he is now going to be the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. And when he was the head coach of the New York Jets, I could just see that when he went to the San Francisco 49ers, I'm like, yes. Like, he's finally kind of back to where he should be. That's, I think, what Todd Bowles has to be. I think that he's not a bad guy specifically where he needs to be, but he needs to be in a different spot. And McDermott, I think, is just a lot more suitable for like a head coach position, in which I think they could be a lot more successful in.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I'll be honest with you, I think if we were talking about coaches that would be on the hot seat to start the 2026 season, Todd Bowles would be right up there for me. I was actually a little surprised they held on to him after the way they fell apart. And especially now, when you look at it, as we talk about some other coaches that had happened, you look at the NFC South now, and that NFC South, while it wasn't a great division, is starting to get better. And what I mean by that is now it looks like you have a foundation there with the Panthers. We've found out that Kevin Stefanski is going to be the next head coach of the Falcons. You also have the Saints, and Kellen Moore actually got a lot out of that team late in the year too. So as we look at this now, again, there are 10 teams that will have a new head coach. It's almost a third of the league. In fact, this has only happened, I think, 2 other times in NFL history where we've had 10 coaches openings at the end of a season. And I mean, could we have an 11th? I don't know if we'll have an 11th. I think we would have had it by now. We say that and watch this before the show.
Yeah, I was going to say, wouldn't shock me.
Watch before the show premieres later in the week that we actually will have an 11th coach. But I think it would happen already. But some names already that have been out there. I totally forgot to add the defensive coordinator from the Packers going to, or the LC guy going to, Hathaway going to the Dolphins. But Giants officially hired John Harbaugh. They introduced him at a press conference on Tuesday. Kevin Stefanski to the Falcons. Robert Saleh to the Titans. I'll say this with the Giants and Harbaugh. This is a home run hire because, there's 2 things that Harbaugh brings that the Giants needed as a head coach that they haven't had since they got rid of Coughlin nearly 10 years to the day that they brought in Harbaugh, 10 years in like 15 days or so. And that's leadership and experience, something this team has been lacking for the longest time. So even if the results are not there in year 1, and I'll be honest with you, I say this as a Giants fan, I don't think the results will be there in year 1. And what I mean by this is I don't think they're going to win like 11 or 12 games. I think they could get to like 8 or 9 wins, but you're not going to get like that 10, 11, 12 win season that maybe you were hoping for right away because there's still some things that have to be ironed out with this team. And the schedule is still a challenge next year. I mean, the Giants, remember, have to play not only that the NFC East, which is still a very competitive division, but you've got to play the NFC West, which just had at least 3 teams that had double-digit wins. And you also have to play the AFC South, which, we talked about it. Texans, best defense in the league. Colts, they started out 8-2. I know they faded. And the Jaguars had a 13-win team last year. And then those other those other 3 wild games are the Lions, the Browns and their defense, and the Saints. I mean, I'm sorry, that's not. I mean, it's nowhere near what they had to play in 2025, but that's still quite a challenge for next year.
No, I also feel like too, like the Saints started to get a lot better in the second half of the season this past year. The Browns, I thought, really competed with. I mean, heck, they were right there with the Bills in the second half of that overall terms of that game. A lot of these bad teams were no jokes this year. So yeah, I mean, our schedule isn't really easy this next upcoming year. So hopefully, a lot of the people who want to talk about the schedule, this year can kind of zip it next year.
I'll defend you, man.
But I felt the same way, Johnny, with the hire of Vrabel, in which I was expecting like 8 to 9 wins. This is obviously coming off of a 4-win season the last couple of years. I mean, we're kind of the transition that we had is, I guess, a little more different because, of course, we're coming off of the 20-year of Brady and Bill, and of course, we had a little bit of that dry spot. And then Trent's trying to find the next guy. You guys kind of more like up and down, but you finally got kind of like the next like guy, of course, now with Dart. So, but I do think it's a very similar-esque type of transition in which you guys definitely just need that culture. You guys need, of course, the quarterback, and that's how you kind of get back to relevancy. And the Patriots, I think, having a very similar as Commanders run from like last year with Jaden Daniels last year. So never say never, John. I mean, I do think that it's going to be a tough schedule for you guys, but I just think as long as you guys have the right coach, which I think you will, and then of course you have the quarterback. You never know if you guys are in contention by the trade deadline. Maybe you get some pieces. You just never know. But I do think you guys will be much better this upcoming season.
Well, that's the thing, too. I mean, the Giants do have their quarterback. They do have their running back. They do have their wide receiver 1. I mean, I'd love to get another one in the draft, whether that's the kid Tyson from Arizona State or Malachi Fields or others. I mean, there are definitely options out there, especially with them having the 5th overall pick this year. That's another thing, too. They do have a high draft pick, too. I think Kevin Stefanski to the Falcons makes a lot of sense, too. I think that's a great fit. Now, the Robert Saleh one is kind of a mysterious one because, like you had said, great coordinator, questionable head coaches of the Jets, but I'm starting to really wonder more and more, was that really on Saleh or was that really on the organization? So yeah, he goes there to Tennessee. Works with a young guy like Cam Ward. I know they need a lot of help. The Titans do. That's for sure. I mean, that's why I really thought something like McCarthy was going to be in play for the Titans. And, he's still available, supposedly. We'll find out. We still have 6 more, at least as of right now, 6 more teams that have to look at. And, of course, if there's anything more, we will either update you next week or you can catch us later on in the week as well. And then, Ben, let's wrap up the show with a little college football talk. And, this is the thing with college football is you come off of an unbelievable NFL weekend, and then you still have this one game. And this is why I think the college football calendar needs a lot of fixing. I mean, that'll be a topic for another day. But nevertheless, we had our national championship Monday night, and what an unbelievable job by Kirk Cignetti, Fernando Mendoza, and Indiana to to go all the way 2 years after what had happened. They capped off a perfect 16-0 season by winning the national championship in kind of dramatic style too, because this was a game that it's not like they ran away with this one. Miami gave them a tough challenge. What a job there by Mendoza and Indiana. And I think Fernando Mendoza, who obviously won the Heisman this year, going to probably go first overall to the Raiders. I think the touchdown that he had to seal it, also with the comeback that he had against Penn State, those are the 2 defining moments this year for not only Mendoza but this program.
Yeah, no, it was a Cinderella type of run that the Hoosiers had, and congrats to them. It's the first. I think it's the first team. There was like a stat out there saying that there's the first team in I think like 50 plus years in which we haven't had a national championship that has not won. Like it's been a certain streak kind of going on in which, a lot of these national champs that have won the last couple of years, it's basically been a repeating. Like they've won it before. Like the Hoosiers have never won it. So I think to win it their first time ever and to win it with an unbeaten type of season, I just think it caps off basically kind of everything that they had. A quarterback that was a Heisman type of winner. And yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it was a really good game. That's kind of what I was just hoping for last night. They were playing in Miami. I think it was kind of half and half. I mean, Mendoza was obviously coming back as a Miami kid, so he really wanted this moment even more than anything. And Miami definitely played really well. I mean, Carson Beck, give him a lot of credit to transferring from Georgia and find a new home. Obviously, people are going to talk about the interception that he had at the end, which I do think was a very I think it was more of a miscommunication. It wasn't a great throw, but I do think that if he had to make that throw again, he probably wouldn't have thrown it there. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, Mendoza obviously did not have a touchdown. He didn't have a pick. The Miami defense played really, really tough, but I think that run that he had on the 4th down, I mean, one of balls he called by Kirk Cignetti in which he wanted to essentially go for basically the win to make it a double-digit type of game, even when Miami came back and scored. That touchdown run that Mendoza had was, like, that's the Heisman, like, right there type of thing. Like, in terms of he had to break some tackles and basically, leap into the end zone, win some contact like that. So it was a great, great type of game, basically kind of everything that I wanted to. And they deserved it. There was obviously nothing to sugarcoat. There's a lot of times when you have a champion that's saying, oh, they don't deserve it. They had maybe some stuff along the way. No, this was completely the best team the whole entire season. And, yeah, Cignetti definitely – I think Cignetti is going to start kind of having some of the – I'm not saying Kirby Smart, in terms of kind of echelon of coaches, but, I think that he's definitely gotten this program kind of back to where they want to be. Like, he's going to have a really good team for a lot of – really good years. And it won't be with Mendoza's brother because reportedly he transferred today. So they're going to go with somebody else. So, but yeah, congrats to them and a really good college football season as well.
Yeah, it was amazing. A lot of the talk with college football this year has been about the 12-team playoff and the controversy. And, all the talk now has been leading up to this game about the schedule. Look, there's no doubt college football needs a shake up, a change in terms of the schedule. I mean, I know that they've been playing these national championships on Monday night. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, especially when you look at the NFL. I mean, I think there's ways you could do this. I mean, maybe I know it's a long shot to start the game at like noon or 1 o'clock at the national championship, but maybe work around with the NFL schedule and maybe do it. Or do it on Saturday. Do it. I know we're pushing the season later and later because of the extra now games because of the 12-team playoff. But
Yeah.
why don't you make it the Saturday of championship week, a conference championship weekend? If you
I was
want to
gonna
make it Saturday, do it then.
I was gonna have it in which they would never do it this time, but it's always a certain just dry week that there's nothing going on. It's Pro Bowl weekend, in which you put the national championship on that weekend, kind of like the last couple of days, right, kind of before the weekend, because the hype actually with the national championship, like the last couple of years, of course, when you have the NFL coverage, it's like you kind of have a mixture of both, but which I think is awesome. I just think for people to talk about, but if you're like a college football analyst or somebody that like this is basically the Super Bowl version of college football, why not have the college national championship the week right before the NFL Super Bowl and kind of have it in which you kind of have like a media week of that, and then you have the media week of the final. It's like it'll be a football dream. I mean, obviously you want it to happen, but like that should be the overall spotlight because I feel like there would just be a lot more coverage than trying to overlap with some of the playoffs going on for NFL.
Well, I don't think that's crazy because I think what's going to end up happening, Ben, is that the playoffs going to expand again. I don't think it's now. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I think we're going to look at like a 16-team playoff in the next few years here. I know Heather Dinich, who probably knows the college football playoff better than anybody's been talking about that, been floating that out there on ESPN that they're looking at a 16-team playoff. I know the Big Ten is trying to go to 24, which I think would be absolutely ridiculous. I think 16, though, is certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
And maybe with a 16-team playoff, you can push it back to something around there. I mean,
March Madness almost.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Now, I mean,
Well,
that's the thing with March Madness, and that's the biggest problem with March Madness, if there's anything, is the fact that the national championship's on a Monday. But I don't think there's anything they can really do about that. But I mean, we'll see. I mean, the thing is, like, I don't want to say you get fatigued from all the football. I think it's hard to even say that, but you almost feel like you have a little bit of fatigue when you have the late game Saturday. I know it wasn't really a game Saturday, but you were still up watching the Seahawks, the 49ers and Seahawks, and then you're staying up till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Now, it was on Martin Luther King Day on Monday. A lot of people have that day off, or they have a half a day or something like that, and some schools are actually off that week, or even that Tuesday. So it does kind of make sense in that regard to leave it then. But it's still, I feel like you almost want to be leading with the national championship and not having it at the back burner, which some years it's felt like that. And really, it's also been like that because we've had national championships that have not been competitive in
it's almost like there was a lot of people on social media I saw too that like they were like, oh wait, the national champions tonight. Like everybody was kind of like, some of the people are just like more shocked about it. And I think
it's also I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's kind of what I was just gonna say.
Yeah, well, and the thing is too is because it's exclusive for ESPN. If people don't have it, I mean, it's not like it's on ABC like with your Patriots. That game is also on ESPN and ABC on Sunday, so you can get it there. It's not like that with the national championship. It's a ESPN exclusive, and then you also have the millions of other alternate casts that you count with there. But nevertheless, I mean, that's a story for another day in terms of what you could do with fixing the schedule. But still, like you said, this was an amazing run here by Mendoza and Indiana. Cignetti now in 2 years. I mean, this is probably the greatest turnaround we've seen, where Indiana was 2 years ago, having 10-loss season after 10-loss season, empty stadiums. Cignetti comes in. They've won now double digits back-to-back years, and now they win the national championship. And, of course, the question is going to be asked is, can they do it again? Now with no Mendoza and even his brother transferring, won't be easy. But still, the bulk of that team is going to be there, and so we will find out. And you know what? That puts a capper on the college football season, which will still go on. We'll still be talking about it because there will be a lot of transfer portal stuff. And that'll also put a capper on episode 98 of Moving the Goalposts. So, of course, just your friendly reminders. Make sure to check us out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network, where you can get not only this show, but all of our shows, including Ben on Hidden for the Cycle and so much more. And, of course, when you're on YouTube, when you're watching us, make sure to hit the like button and also subscribe if you haven't, and have your notifications set so you know when all of our stuff is going to be coming out. Ben, great to see you. Thanks for filling in this week.
Of course, John, anytime.
All right, very good. And we'll hopefully see you soon. We'll catch you on Hidden for the Cycle, football forecast, and so much more. So for Ben Kruse, I'm Johnny Montalbano. Enjoy your week, everybody, and we'll catch you for episode 99. Yes, 99 of Moving the Goalposts next week.
See you guys.